Strength stacking, projectile speed, bow, galvanic arrow, scourge arrow of the menace, juggernaut, Turtleman has been a build that I've been enjoying very much so. Ever since I decided to try around a bunch of bow skills and we found Scourge Arrow of the Menace, which scales really well in projectile speed, by the way, for clear, uh, it has felt amazing. I was very questionable about Galvanic Arrow. We tried a few different solutions, including some solutions that my comments gave me, where we could like run, the Witchbane jewels, and it turns out just run Scourge Arrow the Menace and then swap to Galvanic Arrow for single target, and that has solved all of our issues and not even a problem anymore. So this build has been great, but the main thing it's built around is just simply strength stacking with, of course, the projectile speed graft. The reason we are playing this in the first place is because of this. Whenever you are playing a build like a Scourge Arrow build or like a Tornado Shot build or something like that, because remember, I'm playing with Scourge Arrow the Menace, but you could play with Lightning Arrow, you could play with Tornado Shot, you could play with any bow skill you wanted, even Storm Rain too, it doesn't really matter. I just simply chose Scourge Arrow of the Menace because I like it, and I also like Galvanic Arrow, but you can play whatever the fuck you want, to be honest with you. But the main reason for even playing this is the graft, is for the projectile speed per 20 strength. That has been the best part about this, is just watching the projectiles go so fast. We were supposed to play Thunderstorm in the beginning, but Thunderstorm petered out. So right now, as it currently stands, we're getting well over, I think, 200% projectile speed for free just by stacking strength, which is amazing. And of course, we're the cookie cutter replica Alberon's Warpath strength stacking setup, but we do have a few interesting things going on, which we'll be talking about. Also as well, we are very heavily based on a Widow Hail setup, where we have a +1 projectile Widow Hail on top of a Bow's Fire additional attack quiver. So we're getting at least 4 projectiles from this alone, which very much so makes our single target a lot better, which I'll explain when we get there. Now, why is projectile speed good? Well, in general, when you are trying to fire a projectile in Path of Exile, the speed at which they go is usually very slow, right? You want to have the projectile connect with the enemy as quickly as possible so that you can kill said enemy, because unfortunately Path of Exile is a game where you need to kill the enemy before the enemy kills you, and a lot of your chonk, a lot of your tankiness is built for the enemies that do get through. But if you just let everything hit you, especially in T17, 16.5s, when you're super juicing, when you let things through, that's like when you're going to die. So we want as much projectile speed as possible so that we can hit enemies quicker than they hit us. Now, this has always been difficult because getting projectile speed is a luxury stat on a lot of different builds. All you can really do is just get like a little bit of percent damage if you're like, using it with bows. But with the grafts, that has been made very simple. As we scale damage, we get projectile speed, which is amazing. It even gives us a lot of extra percent increased damage. Now, the rest of the stats on the graphs, I would suggest just getting percent strength graphs. The glowing silhouette has been useful because it just applies a 15% shock to enemies, but like, you could go with whatever graphs you want. These are just the cheapest ones I bought. I think I bought them for like a few div each. I'm not going to say a specific price because I know how that shit goes when it comes to build videos, so I'm not going to say anything on that regard, but I only put a non-trivial amount of divines into the graphs. And of course, like I said, the percent strength ones will probably be absurdly expensive. Now, we are getting all of our flat damage from Replica Alberon's Warpath. This is the basis of the build. Right now, I'm currently at 1941 strength. Technically, if you were to push it to the moon, you could easily get to 3k, 4k strength if you really started pushing mirror to your gear, but this is simply the amount that I put in where I was comfortable with and I was able to do all the content in the game with. I really enjoyed pushing it to this point, but you could push it much further. Now, of course, we focus on increasing our strength as much as possible. We have stuff like Eyes of the Great Wolf currently with 30% increased attributes. I forgot to put the attribute catalyst on it because I'm a dumbass. And like, just you want as much strength as possible, and all of our gear is that, and then we base all of our other stats on strength as well, but mainly the flat coming from replica Alberons is very important. But remember, you cannot deal non-chaos damage, so if you want to put explode into the build, you're gonna have to go with something like Witchbane and Curse on Hit or something like that. You cannot simply just put in like an Aureus and then expect to have explodes. You could maybe go Lycia. There's a few different ways of getting explode, but right now I can't find any that are usable easily other than Witchbane. Now, of course, if you are unfamiliar with strength stacking, but you know, most people are familiar with it, Crown of Eyes is the main way that we're getting our percent damage to work for our chaos damage, because strength gives a percent amount of damage to melee physical damage. It does not give it to chaos damage originally. So to get it to work for our chaos damage, first we must convert it into spell damage thanks to Iron Will, and then we convert it into attack damage with Crown of Eyes. Now, of course, I forgot to put the Iron Fortress here as well, which increases the ratio at which you get that percent damage as well, and it also gives us a lot of block. But all of this just percent damage is coming from our Crown of Eyes and from our projectile speed scaling. That's where all of our generic percent damage is coming from, because getting percent chaos damage normally is very difficult in Path of Exile. You have to kind of like cheese it in a way or use cluster jewels. Now, we are also accuracy stacking because we are a jug. Since we're strength stacking, we get a very large amount of accuracy thanks to Undeniable. That's the whole reason we're a jug. And then we scale this accuracy as much as possible with percent accuracy modifiers like on our ring, on our quiver, which then gets tripled by Widow Hail. We're just grabbing percent accuracy everywhere we can and then scaling our flat accuracy as much as possible. Right now, I'm at 25,000 accuracy just by simply just stacking strength and some percent modifiers, and that gives us a lot of attack speed, which allows us to attack fast, and then that makes up for the attack speed portion of our scaling on top of some other attack speed scaling, which we'll get into in a moment. Now, I made a whole video talking about how the Spectre works for our build. I'll be linking it down in the description, but to give you a very quick TLDR, the perfect Turtle is really good for giving us determination. It gives us free aura so that we can put in purity of elements, so we can be elemental ailment immune, so we can run all those juicy elemental ailment maps without needing to invest into ailment immunity. Also as well, getting resistance as a strength stacker on a budget is very difficult, so having just extra Res across the board with purity of elements is a lifesaver. Also as well, you get the tigers on crit, which give you a lot of attack speed crit, and that's another thing that we're missing a lot is crit with this build. So this is giving us a large amount of crit for free. Also as well, and percent increased accuracy rating is very underrated, as you remember, this is going to scale our attack speed even further. Very strong 2 ascendancy points here. Now, we are stacking strength, so we're doing it with the rings, with Eyes of the Great Wolf, with stacking Walls of Muscle, getting percent attributes on our belt. We're just putting strength every single place we can put it, no matter where it is. It scales all of our damage at once because it scales our flat damage, our percent damage, and our attack speed. The only thing it doesn't scale is our critical strike chance and our critical strike multiplier, which is actually what a large majority of our build is dedicated towards after this, which is understandable, right? And that is pretty much for the slideshow part of the video. Let's just talk about the build in general. So I chose Scourge Arrow of the Menace because I like Scourge Arrow of the Menace. You could play Tornado Shot if you got some Pierce or some Chain or whatever. You could play Lightning Arrow. You could play so many different bow skills. It doesn't matter what bow skill you choose. You can just simply choose whatever you want and then play with that, especially for single target, as I am running Galvanic Arrow, but that's just because I'm fond of Galvanic Arrow. That does not mean Galvanic Arrow is the best slot. So I think Storm Rain is better, but it does a little less single target, but it feels better to play with. Also as well, if you got any source of life gain on hit, it would feel a lot better to play with. But in general, you can choose whatever bow skill you want. I'm just choosing these ones because I just enjoy them. Also, Scourge Arrow of the Menace very much so scales off of projectile speed. Also as well, Galvanic Arrow's AoE also scales with projectile speed, which makes, hitting bosses in a range a little bit easier in boss fights. Like, I don't have to sit right next to them. That helps out a lot as well. But overall, just like choose whatever bow skills you want. Now, for the kind of content I was running a very large amount of 16.5 boxes for the entirety of this character's existence. I did do some T17s, I did do some Uber bosses, like I did some bosses, but it's not necessarily what I would suggest doing with the build. To be honest, you just kind of want to blast with this build. Thankfully, because of all of our projectile speed scaling and our attack speed scaling, our blink arrow with no sockets on it other than mirror arrow itself and some quality, it really just goes so fast. It's like essentially just like your Goku, you just instantly blink everywhere, and it feels really good. It feels absurdly good to play around with. Now, one thing I would suggest is maybe try to find a way to get the cooldown of it as low as possible with like enhance and stuff like that, because in theory, if you could do that, you could definitely just be blinking across the map, shooting, blink, shoot, blink, shoot, and that would make some other strats a lot more viable for this kind of build, because we do have movement speed, but we don't have infinite movement speed. But yeah, I was really enjoying Blink Arrow with this build because of just how much projectile speed we have. Because remember, projectile speed scales the speed at which the arrow collides with the ground, which means the faster we go. And of course, we have all that attack speed, so like the attack animation doesn't take long. So it literally just feels like instantly transporting. Now, a lot of people are going to ask, I hate Spectres. I do not want to run a Spectre. Well, guess what? This Spectre, the entire time I put it on, the moment I put it on, I put on a perfect Guardian Turtle with 5 sockets, right? With Meat Shield, with, I believe, more minion health, and I did a Convocation Link. All that combined makes the turtle pretty much immortal. I've made the turtle immortal. I've done Uber Cortex, I've done T17s, I've done DD boxes, I've done all these different pieces of content. I've had him stand in Bloodstained Blades from T17s, I've had him stand in Awaker's Desolation. Nothing seems to phase Mr. Turtleman. I have never had him die a single time. The only issue, like I said, with Turtleman is sometimes you can accidentally unsocket your stuff and then he'll fall on the floor and then you have to revive him. That is the only issue with Mr. Turtleman, and I've wasted a few div on that, but like, you know, that's like just a skill issue, right? But yeah, Mr. Turtleman has proven to be very useful for just this character in general and for just characters in general, and I'm probably going to be utilizing Mr. Turtleman more in the future, as it just simply worked so well. Like, it doesn't even feel like I have a Spectre. The only issue is the AoE of the buffs isn't that large, but if you get your, maybe if you get your Convocation with Enhance, right, and maybe some other stuff, get some more quality, right, you can eventually get the turtle to be always on top of you, especially if you're like blasting through maps. The only issue is like, sometimes you'll lose the buff when you're like moving away from him, but it's very quickly back up. It's not that big of a deal. Also as well, the the Spectre, the extra buffs it gets from the Farrul bloodline, sometimes he gets like Discipline, and I end up getting like 3000 ES from that. Sometimes he gets like DD, where he's consuming, you know, corpses. Sometimes he just simply has a bubble, and yes, the bubble does work for you. You can sit in the bubble and not take projectile damage. It's very OP when Aelith is like, when we're defending Aelith. There's a lot of different things that Turtleman can accidentally get to make you feel significantly better on your character. So like, it's really funny just to come in to a map and just see, oh, by the way, you have haste. I'm like, oh yeah, right? It's great. But Turtleman has been amazing, and I will not take any slander, as he has been amazing. And that's pretty much it for the build. That's pretty much it for the character. Like I said, I pretty much did everything I could. I did an Uber boss, I did Cortex, I did T17 boss, I did T16.5 mapping. I've done pretty much everything I possibly could think of with this character. Now, with all that being said, this has been Dread, off to go start farming for the next character. Bye.